You know, there is this movie genre that was really successful, especially in the 1980s. I'm talking about horror movies or mystery movies where kids are the main characters. You can see that, for example, in E.T., the Extraterrestrial, or in several Stephen King movies, for example, in It. And in 2016, a brand new show was released that adopted exactly this style element, and that was, right, Stranger Things. The Netflix production begins with a missing person case in the fictional small town of Hawkins in Indiana. A boy named Will Byers disappears into a strange parallel dimension, and his friends Mike, Lucas and Dustin begin to search for him. However, they then come across an unusual girl with supernatural abilities, and the plot becomes more and more mysterious. Although Stranger Things is a modern show, it is set in the year 1983, and it also looks like it. The Duffer Brothers production contains countless references to film classics such as The Goonies, E.T., Stand By Me, The Shining or Back to the Future. A total of 4 seasons have been released on Netflix so far, with the last one scheduled to follow in 2025. Today, in this video, I'm trying to find the famous places where this mysterious show was shot, and we will find all the filming locations right here in and around Atlanta in Georgia. So, here we are. I just arrived in Atlanta. Well, actually, right now I'm not in Atlanta. I'm in a small suburb of Atlanta, which is called East Point. And here and in all the other small towns around the city, a lot of scenes of Stranger Things were filmed. And right here in this town, we should find the house where also the story of Stranger Things begins, which is the Wheeler house, the house of Mike and his family. Yeah, we should find it right here. Let's see if this neighborhood looks familiar. And here it is, the famous Wheeler house from the show Stranger Things, and I hope you're ready. This is what it looks like today in reality. It is a really super quiet residential area here, totally idyllic. There is absolutely no one here. The only thing that you can hear are the insects in the trees. I think they are cicadas or something. Sometimes they are really, really loud, but otherwise there's just absolute silence here. And even if this is the fictional year 1983 in the show, today in 2024 the house still looks exactly the same as in the show. Absolutely nothing was changed here for the show, except that they apparently stuck a US flag on the front door. But otherwise this is exactly the familiar Wheeler house that we know from the series. Which brings us to our first main character from Stranger Things, which is Nancy Wheeler. She stands on a huge turning bay, which also is quite typical for such modern American residential areas. There are always those huge bays at the end of the road where you can turn around with your big monster truck. Where I come from Germany, residential areas normally don't look like that. Well, and the first thing we notice here is that they have put pylons on this turning bay, also with a sign that says "Private residents do not enter." And this might have something to do with the show Stranger Things, because even though there's nobody here right now, I'm not the only one visiting this place. Shortly before I arrived, a few people were here and also took a lot of photos of the house. So I could imagine that the residents here have a little problem with annoying fans, and maybe that's also the reason why they put the sign here. But well, besides that, not that much has changed in this scene. We can see that the show Stranger Things was filmed in autumn or winter. That's why it's a lot greener here today, but if you take a look at the trees and bushes and so on and so forth, they are still here today. This is the reverse shot, and here we can see the street of this residential area. Also here it's a lot greener today. That's why all these houses that you can see in the show are not really visible here, because there are a lot of beautiful green trees in front of them. However, what we can see is this building here on the right, a residential building with a pointed roof and beige color, I would say. Yeah, that house is still here today, and also the houses here on the left, which are hidden by the trees. But what we can see in this scene is the producers of Stranger Things did everything to make this area look like an 80s residential area. Well, they didn't change the houses, they also didn't change the street, but they put a lot of old vintage cars here in front of the houses. For example, this old model over here, which actually doesn't really look like it's from the 80s. It looks like it's from the 50s or 60s or something. Yeah, unfortunately, all of those old cars don't exist here in reality. Here's our next protagonist, who also lives in this residential area, which is Lucas on his bike. Once again, we can see this beige, almost a bit pink house in the show, and even this mailbox is still here at exactly the same spot. This is the same scene once again. The camera crane goes up and we have a slightly better overview of this residential area. We see a beautiful road in the background that goes up and down a hill, and I'm pretty sure this is also the road where they filmed a lot of those bicycle scenes. The kids in the show are always cycling up and down a hill, and I think that was filmed over there. I once again have to say this is a really beautiful residential area surrounded by so many trees. I actually would want to live here, but I suspect it's also quite expensive to live here. We turn to the right and we see, surprise, Lucas' house, which still stands here unchanged today. The grass today in summer is a bit greener than in the show. In the series it looks extremely dried out, even though I'm not really sure if this is an original color. It might also have something to do with the color grading of the show. If you take a look at the picture from the show, you see there is so much color grading going on here to make it look like the 80s and to transport a mystical atmosphere. The warmth has been completely taken out of the picture. Look at his clothes, these colors, they are really rich and bright. Look at the street, it's really dark. That's also not really the case in reality. So they really tweaked the color filter here, and that probably also has an effect on this very dry lawn we can see in the show. Anyway, the house in the background still looks basically the same as it did back then, but it obviously got a new door. For the sake of completeness, I would also like to show you this scene. There is Lucas once again, and once again in front of this turning circle with the Wheeler house. So these two houses are actually right next to each other, like in the show. And here in this scene, Lucas sees this mysterious van. And in this scene, we can see Lucas and Dustin riding along this road once again. That was filmed from over here, and with that I would say, let's not disturb the people here anymore. Let them live their lives in their idyllic neighborhood, and we will move on to our next filming location now. About half an hour away from the Wheeler's house, we will find the next famous living house from Stranger Things. It's the house where Max and her brother Billy live, the siblings we get to know in season 2. And here we can see Billy standing in the front door of his house waiting for us. Well, fortunately in reality, it's not like that. This is what the house looks like today, and we can see, apart from Billy, not that much has changed here. This entire staircase, for example, that we can see in the show is exactly the same today, including this slightly scuffed, crumbling first step. It's still there too. Even the mailbox is still here. Only the red flowers on the bush that we can see in the background are no longer as bright red today. Here you can once again clearly see that these colors are not really true to the original. They put a lot of filters on this picture. However, the house itself still looks as it does in the show. What you can see is that they obviously changed the house number for the show. And here on the left there used to be a swing or something back then. It could actually still be there, but they put a fence or something in front of it. The tree on the left is still here, the forest behind the house is still here, so not that much has changed. The same applies to this street that Lucas rides along on his bike. Again, this is a super green, super woody neighborhood, and to give you a little bit context, we're not very far outside of Atlanta right now. If we take the street outside this residential neighborhood, we're back on a large street in the middle of a city, but this neighborhood looks like it's in a forest or something. It's not. I always find it quite interesting how American cities are designed. You have this huge city with the large streets and skyscrapers and stuff like that. And then right next to them, you have those small islands with a lot of nature, like parks or residential neighborhoods like this one here, where it feels like you're completely outside the city, but you're actually not. European cities are not structured like that. Well, because they are much older. It's always a weird mix of everything. Well, here in the US, it's different. And that's also the case with this residential neighborhood we can see in the show. Here we can see Lucas once again from this perspective, and also here we can see not that much has changed apart from Billy's car, which is obviously not here anymore today, but this house that we can see in the background behind Lucas is still here. Here's another look from this perspective. Lucas parks his BMX bike in front of the house. This is what this scene looks like today. And for the sake of completeness, another pan into the bush, because here we can see Max and 11 coming around this corner. Yeah, that was filmed from over here, and I would say, let's move on. If you watched my recent shooting location tours, you already know every good children's adventure movie has this one scene where the characters walk along a railroad track. We can see that in Stand By Me, we can also see that in the Netflix show Dark, and we can also see that in Stranger Things. And we will find this railroad track right here in Stone Mountain Park, not far away from Atlanta. Well, this railway line that we can see in the show was originally built to serve a quarry. We are here, as I said, in Stone Mountain Park, a park that has its name from Stone Mountain, which is a huge granite rock. This rock also has an ancient relief carved into the wall here. Well, and there used to be numerous quarries here, and the railway was basically designed to move all the materials back and forth. However, this was given up at some point, and in the 1960s, this railway line was turned into a tourism train, which today is called the Stone Mountain Scenic Railroad, which means there are trains like these running through the park all day long. These trains are really super slow, and they also ring a bell if anyone stands on the tracks, because there are also a lot of hikers here. Anyway, I still would not recommend walking along these tracks here permanently. Nevertheless, I was of course interested to know where the exact filming location is that we can see in the show. You might remember the scenes. In one of these scenes, the boys are walking along the train tracks with 11, and in the other scene, it's Steve and Dustin gets 80s hairstyle tips from Steve. However, this Stone Mountain Park is really huge, and those train tracks are several kilometers long. So to make it short, I unfortunately haven't found the exact location where the scenes were filmed. Here's a scene, for example, that matches quite good, even though it's not the exact spot. We can always see this track bed in the show surrounded by these bright stones on the left and on the right of it. Well, and that's also what you can see here in reality at several spots. And even it's not exactly the same place, it looks quite similar, and I think that's enough for me, at least for today. If that's not enough for you, well, then go to Stone Mountain Park yourself and walk around here a little bit. Maybe you will find the exact location, but I would say we move on to our next filming location. The next place on the list is the Hawkins Post. You might remember that's the newspaper where Jonathan and Nancy work. It's this building right beside me. Around the corner there is the entrance. But the funny thing is, the Hawkins Post actually is not in Hawkins. Well, we're actually half an hour away from Stone Mountain Park, where we just went, 40 minutes away from the Wheeler House, where we went before, and we are 1 hour away from the town that actually portrays Hawkins in the show. We come back to that later. So in reality, the Hawkins Post is completely off the beaten track in a place called Lithonia. However, this is what it looks like in reality today. We see Nancy walking down this ramp to the newspaper's office front door. The ramp is still here today, but the building itself seems a bit more colorful to me. What is definitely not in this building is a newspaper, and certainly not the Hawkins Post, as we can see also in this scene. A sign was stuck on the facade of this house, which is no longer here today. And here we can also see what has changed in the color of this house. Today it's actually painted red, and in the show it was still a somewhat grubby shade of yellow. Yeah, this building really looks a lot nicer today than it did back then. In this scene we have another look at this street, which looks a bit busier in reality than in the show. Although there are definitely 1 or 2 shops here that are empty. We can also see that the tree has gotten a little bigger over the years. What kind of tree is that actually? Do you know what that is? The lantern here on the right is still here. However, the sign "Welcome to Lithonia" was obviously taken down for the show, because this is Hawkins and not Lithonia. The sidewalk and street and stuff still look similar, although there are some colorful markings on the street. Well, and once again, the cars have been replaced here so that it looks much more like the year 1983. And in this scene, we once again can see the Hawkins Post in its full glory. Totally dark and sleazy in this scene. Looks much friendlier here today in reality. But here in reality, we can see that this building obviously is empty, isn't it? Well, apparently the death of newspapers has spread in Hawkins too.
Du hast das Ziel erreicht.
Okay, another half an hour on the road, and now we're here. You know this place? If not, check out those yellow American school buses right behind me. Yeah, this is of course Hawkins High School, the place where a lot of scenes from the show Stranger Things were filmed. Let's try to recreate them. Well, or maybe not, because I was immediately warned by a security man in a black car that I should stay on the parking space and not go to the school building. He's obviously standing here all day long to make sure that no one enters this area without authorization. I came here in the evening, so there is no student here anymore. But apparently this building is guarded around the clock, so we can't get closer to the school building. Anyway, let's take a look at the scenes from the parking lot. And if you remember the show, there are actually some scenes filmed here on the parking space. For example, this one. This is the group around Steve sitting on their old car, and they are waiting for Jonathan only to break his camera. This was filmed from this perspective over here, and we can see, yes, the building in the background, Hawkins High School, is still here. And it looks exactly like in the show. Of course, they put a sign on it for the show, Hawkins High School. Here on the left, there is also a banner or something that isn't there in reality either. But the structure of the building still looks the same. In the show, for some reason, you can also park your old vintage car right in front of this building. I think that's not allowed in reality. Well, and since we are not allowed to get any closer to the building, I need to zoom a little bit, which doesn't look that great. Anyway, I'd like to show you the building in close-up, because in this scene we can see that they also put some logos and stuff like that on the walls of this building, which are also not here anymore in reality. However, this roof where the students are always running up and down, also in the show, is actually there. In this scene, for example, we see a typical school scene. Nancy is talking on the phone in a phone booth. All these scenes were probably filmed on this left part of the building. Of course, the phone booth is no longer here today, but these seats right here on the wall that you can see in the show, they're still here today. And the corner where Nancy is standing was obviously that corner over here. And there is one more thing I'd like to mention that we can also see in the show a lot of times, which is this water tank, this water tower that we can see in different scenes. In this scene we can see a sign in front of it, Hawkins Middle School. Well, this water tower is actually here. In the show it also has a marking on the top, or a picture or something, or a logo of the school. Unfortunately, we can't check if this is still here because unfortunately we can't walk around this water tower. However, this school doesn't really hide the fact that it was in the show, because on this building right here we can still see a huge sign saying Hawkins High School. I don't even know if this side of the school was ever shown in the show. I'm not really sure about that, to be honest. However, in reality this is not Hawkins High School, it's Stockbridge Senior High School. And well, the man in the black car, he's looking very skeptical again. So that's why I would say let's drive on to our next filming location. Time for one of the most famous filming locations from Stranger Things, maybe the most famous filming location. This is Jackson. And if you don't know what Jackson is, well, this is the place we all know as Hawkins from Stranger Things, because most of the town scenes were filmed right here. For example, this one. The terribly nervous Joyce, played by Winona Ryder, races around the corner in her old car and then runs into this small hardware store here on the right. And we can see that although this is supposed to represent the 1980s, not that much has changed in this city. This small hardware store here on the right is not really a hardware store. I think there is some kind of a fast food restaurant in there. Also, the shop right next to the hardware store is not the same shop anymore as it was in the show. Radio Shack is written on it, and Radio Shack was, as I learned, a real brand where you could buy TVs and radios and stuff like that. However, it went bankrupt in the year 2015, which was exactly the year when Stranger Things was filmed. So this building over here, I looked it up on Google Street View, was really a Radio Shack building. They didn't just put the sign here. Yeah, today it's not here anymore, but the brand Radio Shack still exists as an online store. Anyway, besides that, they didn't really change anything in this street over here. The 80s charm, once again, was just created through the old cars. The parking spaces here on the left have changed a little bit. They are arranged a little differently. But everything else is still the same. There are actually some things visible in the scene that might not have been there in the real year 1983. If you take a look at this distribution box here on the right, for example, which looks exactly the same in reality like it does in the show. I'm not really sure if this is for electricity or internet or telephone or something, but I think it's for internet, right? Well, if it is, it probably wasn't really here in the year 1983. This is the reverse shot. Joyce runs into this small hardware store very nervously, and that was filmed from over here. Once again, we can see basically nothing has changed. The whole street looks the same as it did when they filmed the show. In this scene, you can also see that they attached different signs to these buildings over here. A sign also disappeared in this scene from the building on the left. It actually has a blue canopy. It's not visible in the show. The intersection itself, however, was basically not changed. The zebra crossing is still here. The traffic lights are still here. The tree in the background, the bushes along the road. Everything still looks like Winona Ryder walked by here just yesterday. Just like in this scene, here we can see the library on the left next to Jonathan, which plays a role in the show. In reality, this is not a library, it's the Butts County Courthouse. And right next to it, on the other side of the street, there is another historic building behind Joyce, which once again is a commercial building. And there is apparently still the same shop in there because the sign on the wall looks quite similar. In this scene we can see the courthouse or the library from a different perspective. This is the scene where the police officer is parking in front of this house. Here we see it again quite well. The parking spaces are arranged differently today. Apparently 1 or 2 lanterns were replaced at some point. And there was also a very large tree in front of this courthouse building that apparently is no longer here today. Joyce and Jonathan have a fight, and then Joyce runs down this sidewalk crying. This funny shaped tree on the right is still here. I still don't know what kind of tree that is. Please write a comment down below if you know. And also this pub that we can see in the show here on the left is still here today, even though it had a little porch or something like that in the past. That's obviously not here anymore today. This is a scene that we can see a lot of times in the show. You always see this furniture store in the show, Royal Furniture Co. In reality, it's not a furniture store, and I think it never was, because on Google Street View you can still see that in the year 2016, when the first season of the show was already filmed, this was a music store, and in 2018 it was a furniture store again. So I think they just put the sign here for the show and then they removed it again. And the buildings right next to it have apparently also been redecorated. And well, once again we can see Radio Shack, which we already saw from a different perspective. Yeah, and also all the other buildings, but they have totally different brand names in reality. Hawkins is slowly declining, as we can see in this scene. Even Radio Shack is now closed, and so is the building right next to it. And here we can see this scene looks completely different in reality, because this building that we can still see in the show was torn down, and there is now something like an underpass or something like that. By the way, this isn't a backdrop or something like that they built here for the show. I looked that up on Google Street View. In the past, there really used to be an old shop here, but they obviously demolished it about 2 years ago. Well, and you probably won't be surprised, but also the Hawkins Cinema, which you can see in the show, actually doesn't really exist in reality. The Hawkins Cinema is actually this little pub that we just saw in another scene. And now it also becomes quite clear why there was a little porch in front of the building. It was obviously a ticket booth they built here to make it look like a cinema. Well, in reality, it's not a cinema, it's a pub. The nice thing about Jackson, the city obviously likes Stranger Things tourists. So at every corner of the city, you see these little paintings that show you where this or that scene was filmed. And all these signs also lead us to this little alley. And real fans of the show, of course, already know what scene was filmed here. Of course, it was the fight scene between Jonathan and Steve and all the other unpleasant guys and girls, as we can see in this scene here, for example. Here we see Nancy looking into this alley and seeing, yeah, something is going on here. Somebody is obviously about to get beaten up. This is actually the backyard of all those commercial buildings we just saw from the front. Yeah, from the back they don't look that beautiful. There are a lot of rubbish bins and doormats hanging over the railings and so on. Yeah, but this alley still has this slightly creepy charm that we can also see and feel in the show Stranger Things. And this is the reverse shot. We can see Nancy standing in front of a commercial building called Rental Solutions. And surprise, this scene still looks exactly the same today. There is still a shop with the name Rental Solutions in the background. And well, I looked that up. This shop is, as the name suggests, really a shop where you can borrow things. For example, all kinds of DIY stuff. You can rent some excavators or drills or jackhammers and stuff like that. Well, and obviously this business looks so much like the year 1983 that they didn't even had to change it for the show. Here's another look from this perspective. It was filmed a bit from above. We can't recreate that in this form, of course. But we once again can see this bumpy alley. And if you take a really close look, there might be another hint that this is actually not the year 1983 that you can see in the show, because right next to Jonathan, or behind Nancy, there is an air conditioning machine, a model that looks quite modern and probably didn't really exist in the year 1983. However, this dingy wall over here definitely existed in the year 1983, at least I'm very sure of that. And now our protagonists are running away, and I would say, let's do exactly the same. Let's leave Jackson or Hawkins.
Links abbiegen auf Church Street.
Jesus. Zug, Alter. Okay guys, the sun has set and now it's time to slowly end our today's shooting location tour, and for that I went to Douglasville, which is 1.5 hours away from Jackson, the place we just visited. Those shooting locations are really far away from each other, but well, I booked a hotel right around the corner, so it's no problem. What do we find here in Douglasville? Right, the Hawkins police office. Well, and here it gets interesting, because this is how the police office looks like in the show, and this is how it looks like today in reality. I'm not really sure what they have done here, but I'm pretty sure they renovated it somehow. I don't think they completely demolished this building, because you can still see those windows here on the left that you can see in the show, but also in reality. However, this middle part of the building looks totally different today. There used to be a porch or something with the entrance door back then, and I think they demolished it within the past few years. And also the whole facade of this building looks different today. What they also did for the show was, of course, putting a lot of signs here saying police, and there are also some logos over here on the wall that obviously also didn't really exist. In reality, this seems to be a municipal utility building or something like that, because right behind this building you can see a lot of pickup trucks and vans and stuff like that that say Douglasville on them. So this seems to be a municipal building and not a police station. In this scene we can see this building again from another perspective, and if this porch still existed, this man that we can see in the show would probably have come out of this door on the right. And if you are still skeptical if this was really filmed here, well, take a look at this reverse shot, because here we have proof. Here we can see Hopper, the police officer, walking towards the police station. And in this scene we can see a building in the background right next to Hopper that is still here today. Just like those parking signs that you can see here and there. The lamp posts and power poles are also still here. So yes, this scene was actually filmed from over here.
Dem Straßenverlauf von US 78 ist 1 Kilometer folgen.
Okay, and if we drive just around the corner here in Douglasville, there is one last shooting location I'd like to show you, which we can see at the beginning of season 2. Mike and his friends go to Palace Arcade, the building you can see right behind me, which today is like the creepiest building in all of Douglasville. And here it is, the bright glowing arcade sign that we know from the show, and the bright glowing building in the background, and this is what's left of it in reality. Nothing shines here anymore, but we can still see a few relics from the show. For example, here on the left, this purple bollard where they mounted the sign. The bollard is still here, just the sign is gone. And this hall itself also still looks the same as it did in the show, just not as beautifully lit. This roof over here on the left is still there, and also there on the right. The purple and yellow paint job is still exactly the same. And if you take a look at the picture from the show, you can also see that also in the show, this building wasn't really in a good condition. For example, if you take a look at this pillar under the roof, it's completely bent. So even though this building looked like a great arcade hall in the show, actually it wasn't. What's really funny is that you can see on Google Street View how this building actually developed within the past few years. In the past, before they shot the show, it obviously used to be a laundry cleaning building. When they filmed the show, they painted it purple, and they also put all those arcade signs here. And when they left the building, because all the scenes were filmed, they left it in exactly this color. Well, and now this building is standing here abandoned for several years now. For the sake of completeness, here's a close-up scene of the entrance area. The boys arrive with their BMX bikes. That was filmed from over here, and this is how the scene looks like today in reality. Everything was boarded up and everything is completely abandoned. This is the reverse shot of the whole scene. Here once again we can see the arcade sign on the right, which is no longer here in reality, but the pillar is still here. And what is also still here is the entire city of Douglasville that you can see in this scene. For example, this building here on the left and also here on the right. And here on the left side we can see that there was a bit of tricking around with a sign in front of this building, because they obviously removed a phone number on the sign. Yeah, I think that was a good idea. And here we can see Will once again. He looks into the sky and sees terrible things. That was filmed from over here, and with that I would say, let's finally leave this scary place. Okay, here we are back in the hotel. That was a really long day. Yeah, but that was also my Stranger Things shooting location tour for today. And if you are wondering now, well, he showed me a lot of places, but there are still a few places missing. Yep, you're absolutely right, but there is also a reason for that. Yeah, there are a few places that are a bit private and I didn't really want to drive past them with my camera. For example, the house owned by Joyce, Will and Jonathan. In the series it looks a bit like it's in a forest or something, and that is actually the case somehow. To get there you have to drive along a gravel road, and then to get to the house you have to take another gravel road, and somehow it all looks a bit like private property to me. So I show you this house really quick on Google Street View. I'm pretty sure it would have been possible to go there, but actually I didn't really want to disturb the people living there. There are also a few other places I found which I didn't show you in this video. For example, the Hawkins National Laboratory. It's this strange building where Will always has to do his examinations. In reality, it's a university complex, and you are also not really allowed to go there with the car as an unauthorized person, but I'm pretty sure you're able to visit it if you just go there. Anyway, I left it out because I just didn't have time for it. And what also could have been quite interesting is this mall that we can see in season 3 of Stranger Things. This mall actually exists, but like many other malls in the United States, it's now closed. Anyway, I just wanted to mention at least a few more places that we didn't visit today. Now you know that they exist, so you can visit them yourself. However, if you liked my Stranger Things shooting location tour anyway, even though I couldn't show you all the places, then please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can also do that. For example, on Patreon, the link is in the description down below, or you can become a channel member on my YouTube channel. Then you will get also exclusive stuff. For example, all the addresses of the places I showed you today, and also new videos before everyone else. So you should check that out. So what are we going to do next? Well, I will stay for one more day here in Atlanta because there is another famous horror TV show that was filmed in the city and around the city. Do you know which show I mean? Well, if you know, write a comment down below, and if you don't know, then we will see each other in 2 weeks and then you will find out. Okay, thanks for watching. That's it for today. Have a safe journey and see you next time.